You are listening to Take Sports, breaking down the NBA game with insight and analysis all in one take. So without further ado, let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome to Take Sports, where we do sports podcasting in one take. I'm sitting here this week with Steve, as always. We're going to be talking about the Rockets, and we're also going to be talking about some of our early off-season predictions for the upcoming season. Steve, why don't you say hello?
Hello, everybody. Glad to be back again. Another interesting week in the NBA. I can't say there was a ton of news going on, but that's to be expected this time of year. But we still have a whole ton to talk about tonight, and I'm actually really excited about tonight's show. We're going to be doing a couple things which are a little bit different for us. In the second half of the show, we're going to be running very early NBA predictions, something I'm looking forward to. We all love predictions, and it's something we'll be able to look back at and see how lousy I am in my predictions most of the time. But our first segment is something that we're talking about a little bit this week, and I'm excited to talk about it. I think I can learn a lot. I think the listeners here can learn a lot. And like John said, we're going to be talking about the Rockets tonight. But what we're going to do is we're going to take John and we're going to put him in the shoes of the coach and what sets he would run, what plays he would run with the Rockets, and how he could maximize the team as himself. John here is a high school basketball coach, and he's one of the most knowledgeable people I know when it comes to X and O's. So, at that, John, why don't we just start out? I know you've been doing a little bit of thinking about how you would handle the Rockets as a coach. What are some of the things that are on your mind that you'd like to talk about tonight?
Well, with the Rockets, it's a constant thing. I don't always agree with everything Mikhail does. I think he's a great mentor to a lot of our young guys, but a lot of his in-game decisions, I know, like as you mentioned, I'm a coach, and I sit there sometimes, and I just really wonder. One that comes to mind right away is last year in the playoffs. Leaving Jeremy Lin in at the very end. He one of our more turnover-prone players, and he ended up turning the ball over at the end of the game, and we lost the game because of it against Portland. So, just little things like that really make me wonder. And nothing against Kevin McHale, he's a great player, but and I think he is a decent coach. But he does make some in-game decisions, and he's made some decisions over the course of his time as the head guy for the Rockets that have really made me wonder. And one of the big ones for me is the apparent lack of offense that the Rockets seem to run. We have some of the best potential. We have some of the best talent in the NBA in two spots in particular, as far as having one of the better two guards, having one of the better centers in the NBA. Those two things alone should be able to get you really competitive in whatever conference you're in, regardless of whether you're in the same conference as the Spurs or whatever. You should be contending for a Western Conference Finals, not getting booted out in the first round. So, one of the issues with the Rockets when you watch them play is that the ball gets really sticky, and we play really well when we're playing high pace and we're playing in transition, and we're getting the ball up and down the floor, and that's when the ball's moving because we have guards bouncing the ball back and forth, and our forwards are pretty versatile, and they can also pass, and they can pull up and shoot in transition, which is a really valuable resource. So having that contrast with how we play in our half court game is it's one of the things that's really holding us back. So one of the things that I would do, if I was sitting in that spot, is I would look at who I have on my team, and I would recognize the fact that I have one of the better two guards and one of the better centers, and I would actually run at least something similar to, if not an identical version of, the triangle offense that Phil Jackson and Tex Winter used to run. The really nice thing about that offense is that it gives those two star players a lot of control, but at the same time, it doesn't just bog down. Where if you watch the Rockets from last year, you have one guy, Harden or whoever it is, have the ball and nobody's moving around him. They're just looking down at Dwight in the post. And, Harden would stand there with the ball and he'd wait for a screen or he'd wait for someone to screen away, and there wouldn't really be enough decisive off-ball movement. It would just sort of be a lot of people moving around for no apparent reason. And having a triangle offense, which has, that star player out on the wing, really gives you the ability to have a decisive cuts, have a really plan of attack, as far as like where the ball goes. The ball goes down to Dwight. There are very two specific cuts that Beverly and Harden would make. You would also have the ability for Dwight to, once those cuts are made, Dwight can then go and post up and he can score from there, which he's pretty effective as a low post guy. He has one of the highest field goal percentages in the NBA. So, having him get more touches down there. I know sometimes, especially at the beginning of the year last year, we had issues getting him touches. Running a system like the triangle offense would get him those touches, especially early in the possession. So,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say I do agree with that. Dwight loves to play in the low post. One of the things I've noticed with Dwight Howard, just real quick, doing some studying on him recently, is just the issue. Uh, he's actually a really good pick and roll player, also, but he refuses to use it. That's one of the knocks on Dwight Howard. But going back to the triangle offense, um, now do you see Trevor Ariza fitting in there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you actually mentioned the pick and roll, which is why I qualified my initial intro to the triangle offense as saying something similar to. Because what I would do if I was running the triangle as the Rockets, I would have the option of feeding the ball down low to Dwight, but Harden and Howard are actually two of the best pick and roll players in the entire NBA, according to all the advanced statistics and everything. And even if you just watch them play, even if you just look at it on paper, it makes sense that those two guys are, they actually rank as one of the highest duos in the entire NBA as far as efficiency goes. So, when you have a guy with, Harden's caliber and Dwight's athleticism, you would actually want to run some sort of set, which isn't in the original triangle offense, but I would actually have Dwight occasionally come up and set a screen for Harden on the wing. And the way I would see Ariza fitting into that is in the triangle, you have that three guy being, he'd be on the other side of the court almost. He'd be, on the opposite wing, maybe at the top of the arc, while Harden's on the other wing. And so when the pick comes, when Dwight comes up to set that screen and Harden attacks the paint, Ariza's guy, in theory, would be one of the guys to step. It would either be his man or the guy who's guarding the four. And either one of those two guys would then have a lot of opportunities to score points. If they leave Ariza, he's a good three-point shooter. He scores a lot of his points off of catch-and-shoot three-point opportunities. So that's where he would really fit in well to the triangle offense because, if they start collapsing too much on the star players, Ariza's man can't do that because if he has the opportunity to catch and shoot, he's going to take advantage of it. And, honestly, Patrick Beverly is the same way. He's a guy who shoots 37%, 38%, something like that from beyond the arc. And he shoots really well from the corner. If you look at the triangle offense, the initial pass is from Beverly to Harden, and then Beverly goes to the corner. So if you're looking at that, that's a good spot for Beverly to shoot from. It's a spot he likes. It's, a high-efficiency three-point shot. It's the shortest three-point shot on the NBA court. So it would be an opportunity for him to take advantage of one of his strengths and be a solid contributor to the offense.
So I mean, looking at it now, you're not saying the true triangle offense. Saying like an offshoot of it. I know there are a couple different types of triangle offense out there, um, but now looking at it in another angle, more a little bit X and O's though. The problem I just see with the Rockets being mostly is their bench, and the scary thing is you mentioned something at the beginning of the show, basically about Harden and Howard being, a couple of the best players at their position. And I mean, they are. I mean, James Harden is essentially the best at his position. Dwight Howard's right there in the conversation. So the fact that this team isn't even considered to be a 1, 2, 3 seed, um, to me, is absolutely amazing when you have two players like that. And like you say, Pat Beverly. Pat Beverly does have a very good 3 point shot. Trevor Ariza is not a bad player. Um, so essentially, when you have a team like that, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with this team to actually make um, this team better? You have the roster in your hands now. There isn't much you can do with it.
Well,
So,
I mean, honestly, I don't think that I think they did a big. They took a big step. I know a lot of people are really. And I love Chandler Parsons when he was in Houston. Don't get me wrong. I think he was a guy who had a lot of potential. But they took a huge step, actually, as far as progressing in the playoffs by actually going out and getting Ariza. One of the big things with the Rockets last year that I mean everybody is aware of is their deficiencies on defense in general. Whether it's James Harden by himself, Chandler Parsons actually wasn't a fantastic defender last year. Even though when he first came into the league, he was widely regarded as a great defender. Even Kobe said that he was a good defender and one of the more difficult defenders that he had to deal with. But as his career has gone on, he sort of lost that edge a little bit. And bringing in Ariza, who is a very, very good defender, he's actually, I believe he finished, tied for 15th place in the Defensive Player of the Year voting last year. So he's a really good defender. Patrick Beverly is right in there. Dwight Howard is right in there. They now have 3 of the top 15 defenders in the NBA on their roster, which in their starting lineup, which a lot of people don't realize. So the deficiencies that James Harden may have, and the reports out of the Team USA practices right now are that James Harden is, he came into camp with defense on his mind. He knows that's his weakness right now. I don't think that people quite give James Harden the credit that he deserves as a competitor. I think a lot of people look at him as just a guy who just sort of runs around and he flops his way to points or whatever. But he's actually, a real competitor. You listen to him talk, um, you know, watch him on the court, and he actually is very competitive. He just has a tendency to, lose his man on defense. And if he is able to lock into his man and even just play, marginally better defense, that's another hole that isn't there. So, that's 3 of the top 15 defenders again in the league in the same starting lineup. That is a big hole to have fixed for the playoffs. Ariza's another veteran presence. He did well with the Wizards last year. I think the biggest weakness for the Rockets right now is their bench. And, so while it was defense last year, this year it's going to be the bench. If the Rockets, especially with their pace of play that they play at, if I'm Kevin McHale, I would probably try to slow this team down a little bit. Even though we play so well in transition, I would try to slow us down a little bit. I would try to make it so that we can get a little bit more time out of our starting rotation. Because once you look at the bench here, I mean, the best player, there really isn't much on our bench. We have an unproven backup point guard who I happen to like. I don't know if he's necessarily NBA ready yet, and Isaiah Cannon. We have Troy Daniels, who, as you know, was a hero in the playoffs last year. I really like him, but again, as far as the first option off the bench for James Harden, I don't know if that's a great option. We just don't have much off the bench, and I think that's going to be our biggest weakness going forward. So if we can figure out a way to keep our guys on the court for longer, and that's going to require slowing down our pace, not running as much maybe, but if we can find a way to keep our starters on the court, that might be a good option for us.
so the way they run their team and the way Kevin McHale coaches as a GM, let's say you're on the hot seat, you've got to make a decision on Kevin McHale as your coach. Let's say the Rockets start out the season, I don't know, 20-25, and you're the GM. Um, how do you look at it? And I know it's going to be hard to say because we don't know why that team's 20 and 25, but as of right now, is Mikhail the guy moving forward?
I wouldn't fire Kevin McHale in the middle of the season unless we go like 0-20 to start the season. I think that at this point, the thing that people forget about 2 years ago is that, when it was basically the James Harden show in Houston, is that we had a really young team. We had one of, if not the youngest team in the NBA. Last year with Dwight, it was Dwight's first year. Yeah, I think we should have gotten past the first round in the playoffs. To be fair, I think that if we had played pretty much any other team in the Western Conference in the playoffs besides Portland, we probably would have. Because, I mean, I'm not, maybe not the Spurs, although we did do very well against them in the regular season. But, Portland was a tough matchup. So I think that Kevin McHale has earned the right to a little bit of leniency. I'm not sure if he's the man going forward. I look at what he's done so far and how much experience he has versus again, just the boneheaded rotational issues that again, when I'm watching him, and they're widely known. I mean, there are online communities, forums and stuff, blogs where people will rant for hours about Kevin McHale's issues as a situational or as a game time coach, and it's stuff that just, again, the entire league seems to know about it. At a certain point, yeah, you have to wonder if he's the guy going forward. To be fair, I'm not sure who is the guy going forward. So, if there was a great option out there, say somebody, next year becomes available, maybe, yeah, go out and get him. But right now, I don't see there being that guy out there available who could really turn this team around. So, I would give him leniency at least for this year, and I don't know if he's the guy going forward, but I think that that's too hard of a question to answer at this point.
I'll agree with you there. I mean, at this point, it's all speculation. Anyhow, I'll just throw out that just Houston's in a real tough conference, and uh, you know, I'm wondering what's going to happen with that team. And as a fan, I just, like we say, we keep on saying, we have two arguably the best players at that position, and after that, there's definitely a step down. Like you said, Ariza and Beverly, they're nice players, um, but they're not, um, they're not fantastic players. They're not even very good players that could get your team over that hump. And that's the one thing I worry about. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about, what you would do as a coach, what your playbook would look like, and so forth. Because truth of the matter is, we keep on going back. But when you have, when you got those two players there, it's just an issue of you can coach some wins out of this team.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, that's sort of the thing that really makes me wonder about the Kevin McHale issue is, like, how much of it's sort of like, the triangle offense has always had the sort of thing around it, the perspective around it, that is it the system or is it the players? Because very few coaches run that system unless they have very good players. So, there's always sort of that argument around that. Well, it's sort of the same argument for Kevin McHale. He has these great players. Are they getting to the playoffs because of those great players? Like, would he be able to, let's say the Daryl Morey wasn't able to go get James Harden last year. Would he have gotten that team, the most out of that team? Or would they have been, exactly, a coach is supposed to bring a team to, sort of exceed what their talent is capable of. With his, whether it's his skill or, his sets, whatever it is that he does well. For Kevin McHale, I think he's a great development coach. There are a whole bunch of different types of coaches out there. I think he's a great coach to sort of bring players along from a skills perspective because he has so much experience and he was such a great player that he, especially with post players, he can really help them out. So, with a guy like that, you got to wonder how much of it is him, pushing his players to the most that they to the best that he can when they're a young team that just needs to work on the little things, or how much of it is these good players sort of propelling them along. And that's sort of always the debate, and it's always going to be the debate in my mind as far as going forward with Kevin McHale as a coach for this team.
And I think where it really gets a little bit tricky there is Harden is both of the players that you're talking about right there. He's that great player that you need to coach, but he's also that young player who does need to be pushed along. And you need somebody, with him, it's going to take, and it may not necessarily be up to the head coach, assistant coaches, mentors, anybody you can work with him, but it is going to take somebody around him, and they need to be pushing him every single day. If he's talking about playing defense, and he really wants to step up his defensive game. But is that for the World Games, or is that for the 82 game season? That's the question. And so he's actually both those players. He's still a young player in the league, as great as he is. He's still a young player, and he still can be taught. And, that goes right into coaching as much as the X and O's do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, like there are a lot of different parts to coaching, whether it's the X's and O's or whether it's being a development coach. And I wonder if we need to do something to help our guards a little bit, because right now, James Harden needs someone, as you said, to push him, and whether that means we bring in a veteran guard to push him in practice, somebody who's really good at defense. I mean, for example, and obviously he's signed right now, but a guy like a Tony Allen or Thabo Sefolosha was available. If we could have brought him in, he's played with Kevin Durant. He could guard James Harden every day in practice and be a top-notch defender on him. I wonder if Trevor Ariza is going to be able to help do that a little bit for us, where he's going to be able to defend, obviously not when they're doing, first team versus second team to run over their offense or whatever, but if they mix up their 5-on-5s, which some coaches do, some coaches prefer not to, it's all a matter of your style. But if they do decide to mix up their 5-on-5s, I would absolutely put Ariza on James Harden, because he'd be able to challenge Harden the most.
Well, ironically enough, let me ask you something, because you probably know right off the top of your head, but how many years is Ariza signed for?
I believe it's 4.
4 years. Who would have been, in my opinion, who would have been a better fit for this team, and it may not be for wins today, because unfortunately, I know you're a huge fan and so forth, but unfortunately, I don't see any scenario where the Rockets this season are contending for a title. So they may sacrifice a couple wins, but where I think it would actually help the team, and maybe it wouldn't sacrifice wins at all, is I actually think signing Paul Pierce for 2 years would have been a better option than Ariza. I think because you're getting rid of that contract. You have somebody who's been through just horrible, terrible seasons in the league to winning a championship. Somebody who knows the work ethic, and I think having somebody around like him with James Harden, also, and with Dwight Howard, would be. I just think that would have been a much better move for the Rockets this year.
Well, I mean, so here's the thing with that is James Harden has, I believe, 2 years left on his contract. So if you don't make moves like you're going to win now, you got to wonder if, I mean, I hate to say it, like as a Rockets fan, this is like, bordering on blasphemy, but if we aren't successful this year or we aren't successful next year, I don't see a scenario where James Harden is able to be enticed to stay in Houston, because I think that he's going to want to go somewhere, anywhere where he's going to be on a competitive team. So that's why I think that, obviously they were going after, I mean, their first choice was not Trevor Ariza. It's not like they entered the offseason going, hey, that's the guy we want. No, they first went after Melo, then they went LeBron, then they went after Bosh, and when none of those things worked out, and then the Mavs made that crazy offer on Parsons, and they lost their current starter there, they had to go get a small forward. I don't think Paul Pierce can give you starters minutes anymore, especially on a fast-paced team out in the West where you have to play somewhat fast. I don't think that Paul Pierce could be that guy anymore. Maybe, yeah, off the bench, no problem. But they needed a starting small forward today. And I think that Trevor Ariza is able to do a lot of the things that you're talking about. Yeah, he's not Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce is one of the greatest players, especially current active players. But he does bring playoff experience. He's a guy that's familiar with Houston. He's familiar with the front office. He's played there. He's played here before. And he can shoot threes, I believe, at a higher clip than Paul Pierce. So that fits a little bit more into what the Rockets are trying to do as far as their metrics go, because they are trying to run a metrics-based system.
I understand that. There's two ways to look at it. The one way is, like you're looking at it with Ariza, so you're ready to move forward with Ariza and his contract. And my opinion, and you're thinking by having that stability showing that you want to win may be a reason to keep Harden when that time comes in 2 years. The way I actually see it is, when you got Paul Pierce who's either up this year, and chances are this may be his last year anyhow, regardless if he signs for 2 years. I look at it like it gives the Rockets the ability to free up salary, still put together. I really, even at his age, I don't see the Rockets losing that many more games with Paul Pierce on your team opposed to Ariza. I don't see that much of a humongous drop off. And I just think it frees up salary, and that could be another reason why Harden may want to stay, depending on how they would be able to put together that team.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this before. There's a certain level where you've got assets, and then you've actually got to turn them into something. I mean, I think we were talking about it with the Celtics before. They've got so many draft picks. They have to turn that into something, because if they don't get anything out of it, it's sort of like what the Rockets were doing, in recent memory the last couple of years, where they've had all these assets and they've turned them into James Harden and they've turned them into all these different pieces. They've turned it into Dwight Howard. But if they did what you're talking about with Paul Pierce, not only would they be having to re-sign James Harden, going through that whole thing, trying to entice him to stay, but they would also have to be trying to convince him that they're also going to be going after some other top flight free agent, and you run the risk of him and, let's just say, because I think he's a free agent the same year as KD, maybe the year after. But you run a risk of, if those two guys are free agents the same year, you run a risk of them just saying, hey, you know what, why don't we play together? Why don't we both go to Washington and play together? And, where they've played together before, Washington needs a small forward and a shooting guard. Bradley Beal aside, I would rather have James Harden. So, you run that risk, and I think that what the Rockets are doing right now, especially after how poorly this offseason went, is they were trying to hedge their bets a little bit.
Well, the one thing I'm looking at also, and, I would hope that Harden would look at it the same way. They're in a tough position right now. We've talked about this before. Definitely not lack of trying, not lack of trying to get that very good player. All it took was Bosh signing there. That's all it took for us to be having an entirely different conversation. And I'm sure you actually, if they did have Bosh on that team and you were breaking down what the team was doing, you'd probably even be a lot more excited about the different opportunities that they could put together on the court.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's not forget that if Bosh had signed there, they would have been able to retain Parsons because we would have had bird rights on him. So we would have had a starting lineup of Beverly, Harden, Parsons, Bosh, and Howard. That would have been absolutely incredible. You could pretty much run any system. You could have run no system, and you would have gotten wins with that team.
So long as they're playing the right way, you can pull it off. As long as the players are playing the right way, you can pull it off without a system. So, Um, so, that's basically just, a little bit of a look at the Rockets there. You got anything else to throw in
Well, I
on
guess
them?
my final notes are, one guy that we didn't talk about at all really is Terrence Jones. I think that, this is his year. He has to prove something this year because the Rockets made they didn't disguise it at all that they were going after a power forward in free agency. They were talking about, getting Melo at first, and everybody was assuming that they were going to run him at the four. Talking about when they were, there was like one day I think where everyone was sort of flirting with the idea of LeBron going to Houston. They were talking about running him at the four. Bosch was running at the four. I think Terrence Jones is a good young player. This is his year that he has to show he's going to do something. Because if he's
Well,
not, they need to move on from him. Because if they're really going to be making a championship run, they need to be going and getting a four that can get them there. Because again, I like him. I think he's a good player, but he needs to prove that he can do more than just be the guy that cleans up Dwight Howard's misses.
right, but you at least got to give it to him. He's definitely had pushed up his numbers nicely to his second season. So, like you say, this is the third season right here is so all important for a young NBA player on the fringe of being a starter on a very good team, and he is that type of player right there. But he's made very nice strides from his rookie season.
Well, I mean, his rookie year, he wasn't getting starters minutes the entire
Not at
year.
all.
B,
No,
he
not at
also
all.
wasn't playing next to Dwight Howard. He was playing next to Omar Ashik. So when you're playing next to Dwight Howard, who, I mean, look, everybody looks at Dwight Howard and they see this athletic guy who can do all these defensive things and, might score some points. The thing that nobody seems to recognize, and I think it's because a lot of people that look at this situation, they don't look at him play. Dwight's actually a pretty good passer. I don't know if anyone remembers back in the days when he was playing in Orlando and he had those four shooters around him and he was able to find them. He'd get doubled down in the post and he'd be able to look out and find, Rashard Lewis across the court in the corner and be able to hit that guy for a three. Dwight's a good passer, and there were some times last year when I was really impressed with his ability to find Terrence Jones across the paint when the opposing four would step to double Dwight, and Dwight was able to find Terrence Jones with a nice pass, or Dwight would force up a shot and Terrence Jones was able to go get a rebound. He's an athletic kid. He can also play pretty good defense. He gets blocks. He just can't defend a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge, who is on pace to be an all-time great. So that's sort of a situation that we have to deal with in Houston. Is we have to figure out what we're going to do with him, whether he's the solution. We also have Donatas Moniunas, who's big 7 foot tall Lithuanian guy who rips it up in summer league every year. But I don't have to tell you, you're a Celtics fan. You also have a 7 footer who rips it up in summer league every year. There's only so much you can take out of those situations. So
Exactly.
we have to figure out our future at the four.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, a little bit of a look at the Rockets. I know you know them well. I'm sure you would have liked to get a bit more technical, but a very good breakdown there. A very good breakdown on the Rockets, and I since we've been working together and so forth. I pull for the Rockets. I follow the Rockets more than I have in previous years, and I'd love to see them have a good season. And, like you said, there really isn't much when it comes to the coach of the team and so forth. Right now, I mean, you've got McHale. You could be doing a lot worse than McHale. And there really isn't anybody else out there, anyhow, at this point, who could come in and do, as good a job, I personally think.
Absolutely. I just want to let all of our listeners know that if you want more segments like that, I'd be more than willing to look into your team, your favorite team. Just make sure you get at us on Twitter and let me know. And if we get enough votes for a team, we'll make sure that for me to go in depth and we'll cover them for a good half of a show and talk about them. Because I happen to know the Rockets really well because I am a Rockets fan, but there are 29 other teams out there. So make sure you let us know. Give us some feedback.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're a coach or a player alike and you like some really good insight to the game, I just want to remind everybody also, John can write some excellent articles that really breaks down the game nicely. It's on our website, onetakesports.weebly.com. And he writes some excellent articles, and it really looks at the game a little bit differently, a little bit more in depth than most of the casual fans will look at. And you can learn a lot there. So I always like listening to what you have to say. And every time I talk to you about coaching, I seem like I learn a little something.
Well, we
And
both we both learned something from each other, man. I mean, that's what makes this so great.
right, so when we jump into the next segment, and I pick the Celtics going to the conference semis. Um, it makes sense. You can learn a lot from me.
Yeah, you think I'm gonna learn a lot from that, huh?
Oh boy, um, but that's where we're going next.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
you got the Celtics going to this conference semis. Who else you got?
well, I just like doing this very early in the season. We still know that the teams haven't fully shaken out. You don't know exactly what the rosters are going to look like, but we're pretty close to know what all these teams are going to go into training camp with. So I was looking at it, and I remarked to you right before the show started a couple observations as I was putting together the list here. And one of my two big observations this season is we've been talking about it all along is just how deep this draft really is and what it could do to the landscape of the NBA. But the other thing that I have noticed is, everybody's talking about how the East is getting better. The East is so much more better, but when you break it down, you once 15 teams in the East and you go out West. Um, it's a totally different story, and the East is still surely lacking the West right now. Um, but that being said, so where do you want to start? Do you want to start at how we think the conferences are going to shake out, or do you want to get into some awards? I'll
No,
leave that
let's
one
let's
up to
start
you.
with let's start with the conferences. I like starting there.
All right. Well, I was looking at it, and no, in the East, no humongous surprises out there. But I'm looking at it and breaking down who's going to make the playoffs. It gets very interesting, very hairy after the fourth spot, in my opinion, in the East. I think my first four teams that I have picked, I think a lot of people do, and I actually have the Bulls beating out the Cavaliers in the regular season this year, finishing at the number one seed. After
Now,
that,
wait a second. Let me ask you a question here. Are you taking the roster as it stands now, or are you taking it, the
I'm
quote
taking the
unquote
Kevin.
the Kevin
Yeah,
Love trade into account?
uh,
Okay.
yeah, all things. Yeah, why don't we just preface any of our predictions tonight with um, the Kevin Love deal going down? It's looking more and more every single day like Thaddeus Young is going to end up a Timberwolf. So I'm going to go under the assumption that this is a done deal. At least if nothing else, um, Wiggins is Wolf and Kevin Love is Cav. Um, so moving forward, I got the Bulls and Cavs 1-2 right there, and my 3 and 4 is I like Washington a lot. I have Washington as my 3 seed. Got Toronto as my 4 seed. I like them a lot this year. I think they're getting overlooked a little bit. Um, but going down the line real quick. And if you think I have any way out whacked out picks, stop me at any time here, John. But I'm liking Miami as being the 5 seed in the East, followed up by Charlotte, Atlanta, and I got the Knicks sneaking in at number 8. Um, After that, I can flip flop the Knicks and the Nets. The Nets could surprise a few people, jump up a few spots right there. Rounding out the East through the playoffs, I've actually, breaking it down. I think what everybody's going to want to see and where I have it right now in the conference finals is the Bulls Cavs, and I have the Bulls taking it there.
All right. Well, I'm just going to run down my list. I actually have Cleveland at number 1 and Chicago at number 2, but I have the Bulls beating the Cavs in the conference finals.
Okay.
So I do agree with you on that. Um, I have Charlotte actually as my dark horse out east. I have them finishing number 3. I like the addition of Lance Stevenson there. I'm a huge Kemba Walker fan. I think everybody forgot that Al Jefferson was hurt in the playoffs for them last year. I think that would have been a much better series with Al Jefferson manning the middle, because
I'm not
especially.
jump. I'm not jumping in and calling you crazy. Not at all.
All right, well, I got Charlotte finishing number 3. I got Toronto at number 4. I think that Washington's lack of a real small forward at this point is gonna sink them a little bit, not kick them out of the playoffs. But I got them going down to number 5. I actually have Atlanta finishing number 6. I have Miami at number 7 and Brooklyn at 8.
So I mean, for the most part, we're there. I think the big difference. Well, I think we're actually flip flopped. For the most part, Washington and Charlotte there,
Yep.
and how we see it. And it's funny. I mean, you really did like Charlotte last season. I remember talking about it, and through the playoffs, I really like Washington. Uh, so it's more of a personal feeling. So you got the Bulls coming out of the East.
Yeah, I got the Bulls coming out of the East. Yep. I
Yeah.
think that at the end of the day, Joakim. I mean, again, we're looking at it, and Anderson Varejao is a good center. I think that when after all the conversations we've had, you and I both agree that the most important positions, and there are definitely there's studies to back this up. And the number 1 and the number 5 are two of the most important positions they're the most two important positions on the basketball court. So I think that that's why I give the edge to Chicago, is because they have, I think that Kyrie Irving and Derrick Rose. I think Derrick Rose is a little bit better than Kyrie. I think he's a lot better than Kyrie if he's playing at MVP level. I'm not sure if he's at MVP level, so that's why I said a little. I got Derrick Rose a little bit better than Kyrie, and obviously Joakim Noah is a huge upgrade over Anderson Varejao. I know that Cleveland has Kevin Love. I know that they have LeBron James, who is the best player in the league, but I can't see a situation, and maybe that would be the big weakness. Is right now the Bulls don't really have anyone to guard LeBron, so I could go either way on it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, either team could come out of it. One of the reasons I actually have the Bulls ahead of the Cavs in the regular season is just more out of, it's going to take the Cavs a little bit time to gel. So I think the Bulls can go up on wins on them, similar to what Indiana did to Miami last year, when Miami was having some early issues and Indiana got off to that hot start, and that hot start was enough to at least carry them to the number 1 seed. So, that's how I have the Bulls right there. But I really like the Bulls a lot this year.
Yeah, the Bulls.
No,
I like both teams. I mean, honestly, with Kevin Love on that team, that Cavaliers team is really, really dangerous. Both teams are in a great position to succeed, and until those teams no longer are around, I don't know who else is gonna rise to the top in the East. Just because you can try as hard as you want, but at the end of the day, you're competing with two of the best teams that we've seen put together in a while.
yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But I think either way you look at it, the 1 and 2, you get the 1 and 2 in the East, and then you pretty much have everybody else. The teams are getting a little bit better, but it's not the powerhouse. Like we have out west, and out west is a lot harder to pretty much shake out. Definitely, at least out west, I think you have at least 10 teams in the mix,
Yep.
and just starting it off, I'll run them down quick. Once again, if you think I'm out of line, I want you to let me know about it. But in the west, I got OKC. I got that one in the West this year. I really like Westbrook and Durant, and just as we're talking about predictions real quick, I think Westbrook's actually going to have as good, or if not a better year than Durant does this year. I think Westbrook's really going to break out this year. It's a feeling. That's all it is. Um, but after that, run it down. I got the Clippers coming in number 2. I got the Spurs at 3. The reason I knocked the Spurs down to 3 is the way Coach Pop will rest his players, and I don't think he's so concerned with getting the number 1 seed. Get in, and then we'll win. That's his attitude. I got the Mavs at 4. I think the Mavs actually really improved their team this year. I like the Mavericks this year a lot. So I've got them coming in at number 4 in that tough conference. The Blazers at number 5. They made some noise last year. I got the Warriors at 6. At 7, I got the Grizzlies. And you're going to hate me for this, my friend. But number 8, I got the Pelicans. And I got the Rockets falling out in the 9th position. I know it's crazy, but you just talk about how deep the West is. And you look at all these teams, and how can you not look at the teams I named and say, geez, I can see any of those teams being a playoff team. But I've got that going through. I'll just run it through real quick, but I actually have OKC going up against the Spurs, for the conference championship there. And I think Oklahoma City is going to not finally put an end, but put an end to the Spurs right now. And I don't see the Spurs continuing on the season.
So I just want to throw this in there. You said a little while ago that, you would have to see it fail before you ever bet against the Spurs again. What changed your mind?
Well, I mean, honestly, if you look at the team, rational thinking and not rational thinking, but how many years now have we been saying, this is it for the Spurs? And I did last year. Actually, last year I even said before the season, I said, you know what, I've been going against the Spurs every single year, and I'm not doing it this season, and I called it. But I really like Oklahoma City this year. Ibaka, I think, is a beast, and I think this is going to be that year that they have a legitimate third star to superstar. Somebody, we had our conversation a couple weeks back about who's next, and he never really even came into the conversation. And it actually surprises me that I overlooked him because I think Ibaka is going to have a monster year this year. So I just think they're going to be a little bit too tough for the Spurs. That's, early predictions. I think we're going to probably do a little quick rundown right before the season starts. This could all change. This is very early. But as I'm breaking down the rosters and so forth, that's how I'm looking at it. But, anybody who takes the Spurs is not a fool.
Well, I got to tell you, I got the Spurs not only finishing best out west, but I got them going to the finals again. The instinct in me keeps saying that Father Time is going to catch up with this team. And, it hasn't yet. Tim Duncan is the big fundamental. He's going to keep doing his thing. Tony Parker is going to keep doing his thing. And the thing that really gets me with this team is even if Tony Parker, I think that Tim Duncan is really the only guy that they can't lose to injury. If Tony Parker gets hurt, Patty Mills is like one of the best most underrated players probably in the NBA. Nobody really knows who Patty Mills is. When I watch him play, I see a guy that could be starting on half the teams in the NBA. He's a great point guard. He can shoot. He can defend. I really like Patty Mills. Now, obviously, he's not Tony Parker because Tony Parker is like probably top 5 point guards in the NBA. But he's a guy who can fill in and be serviceable and still be able to get them wins. Well, if Parker were to recover or something like that. Kawhi Leonard is a rising star in the NBA. He's a guy that, you were talking about Ibaka being a guy that when we were talking about who's got next, Kawhi Leonard is a guy that I think falls right into that as a guy that we didn't really talk about, but he should absolutely be in that conversation because he is going to be he's in such a great system, and he's so humble, and he's such a hard worker, and he's such a good defender that he is going to be just the guy that propels this franchise forward.
I think that's why. I actually think that's why he does get overlooked, because he is such a humble guy and such a humble team and a humble system, that I think that is one of the reasons that he gets overlooked.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Yep. So I got San Antonio. I got OKC finishing second. I have the Clips finishing third. I actually have Golden State finishing fourth. I like the Splash Brothers. I think that another year under their belt. I think that they're just going to keep getting better and better and better and better, and they're not going to stop. And eventually, it's going to get to a point where they're going to be the best backcourt. I see them as going down in NBA history as being one of the best backcourts out there. Just not necessarily from a great Curry's a great distributor or whatever. I just think that they're both going to put up so many points that it's going to be they're going to have to go down in NBA history regardless of whether you like them or not. And they're getting there. They're getting right to the point where we're going to start watching them shine. I got Houston finishing fifth. I have Portland sixth, Dallas seventh, and Phoenix at 8.
You got Phoenix at 8. See, now, like I said, the top 10 teams in that conference, I can see any of them making the playoffs. I mean, I have the Rockets in my early pick, finishing at 9. I could have them going as low in my own mind as, a 6. You could throw the Suns right in there, that next team right in that mix. And, as crazy as this may sound, and this is maybe way out there, and maybe this is a bold prediction. It isn't, because, I've picked my teams right now, but, if you were to throw something a little bit bold out there, you think the Lakers could make the playoffs?
No.
You don't think?
No,
you don't think they stand a chance of making the playoffs?
Look, there was a recent, and I'm trying to remember what magazine it was in, because I just want to make sure credit's going where credit is due, but there was an interview with Shaq recently. It was like either in Dime magazine or Slam magazine or something like that, where he said that any team with Kobe Bryant is a potential playoff contender. Kobe is one of the greatest of all time, but look, he's coming off of an injury, a big injury. It's not like he, broke a finger. He's coming off a big injury. This is not something that I'm just going to jump right back onto the Lakers are in the playoffs. I have the Lakers being around an 11 seed out west. Honestly, I think that the Kings are a better team from top to bottom than the Lakers are at this point.
No, actually, I've got the Lakers at the 11th seed. But I do say the top 10 teams in that conference, I can see any of them on. I think it's going to be a real interesting fight come down there, and I think it's going to be another one of those seasons where you're going to take it down to the final game, the final 2 games or so, to find out who gets that 8 seed.
Oh, man. The crazy thing about the West is the way it's all going to break down. I could honestly see, the final 4 seeds out West, as far as, seeding goes, I could see the entire thing being decided on the last day of the season.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I can see each team flip-flopping through the last week of the season. All the way through it. I can see the 5 drop into the 8 like it's nothing, or the 9 like it's nothing.
And you know what? If the NBA is really smart about how they're going to do the scheduling, which actually I think the schedules just got released, and I haven't really looked at them that closely yet, but if they were smart about it, what they would do is they would have the teams that are going to be contending for the last 4 spots, they would have them playing each other in the last week of the season. Because that would create, you talk about playoff basketball, that would create game 5s every, or game 7s every night on the last week of the season.
Yeah, definitely. You're going to the playoffs a week early.
Yeah, exactly. That would just be some great basketball.
And it definitely makes it fun. You see that happening, and, the same thing's happening in the East, but the difference is it's happening in the West because they're all so good. In the East, it's just going to be who
sucks the least.
Bad teams fighting to get that 8 spot.
Or fighting not to. You look at it. Honestly, Brooklyn and Miami, like Miami is an injury to D-Wade away from not even being considered in the playoffs, in my opinion. I mean, I like CB, Chris Bosh, but I can't see him propelling a team to a 7th seed by himself if D-Wade goes down. And even Brooklyn, like they're in a really similar boat where they have a lot of older players, and if one of those older guys goes down or can't perform the way that he has in the past, I just can't see that team, being able to make the playoffs. And any other team could sneak in and basically, I mean, I hate to say it, but ruin like their chances or their thoughts of rebuilding. I mean, you got a team, the team that comes to mind, right away is the Celtics. Honestly, a team that was end up being a lot better or seeding themselves a lot higher because they were in such a terrible East, and I think that they were hoping for a much higher draft pick, and they just didn't get it because the East was so bad.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And it's a horrible situation to be in and try and get yourself out of, especially when it is such a bad conference, because it just leaves those teams being stuck at that 8 seed all the time. The teams that are actually trying, really trying to make that push to move their way up. But that being said, even in the horrible East, there are a couple teams that are definitely some game changers out there. Namely, in my opinion, the 3 teams, in my opinion, that seems to be turning the East around would be Washington, Toronto, and Charlotte.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think those are your grind them out teams.
Yeah, those are the teams you can look forward to in the future. And when I say the future, I'm talking near future. The next year or two. Really stepping up, and the only question will be is if they're going to be able to contend with these Bulls and Cavs teams for the next few years.
Let me just throw something out there, just because I just thought of it. You said that Houston doesn't make the playoffs this year. Houston doesn't make the playoffs this year. Kevin McHale is not going to be a head coach of the Houston Rockets next season.
Agreed.
That's
agreed.
No questions.
Yeah, I'll throw that up there. Definitely.
I mean, if that were to happen, honestly, like with Dwight Howard and James Harden, head would roll from the top down. I mean, honestly, as much as everyone in Houston loves Daryl Morey, I think that would put Daryl Morey even on the hot seat. That would put the entire coaching staff out on the street. I'm not sure. I don't know what would happen in that situation, but it would not be good.
No, definitely not. One other thing, real quick, before we get to our awards, that I just want to throw out there. I told you earlier I'd have some off-the-wall predictions here, and I'm not talking not nearly the realm of the playoffs, but believe it or not, the team that I think could end up is one of the most improved teams and gain the most wins over what they had last year. To me, believe it or not, is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. I actually think when you pair a Wiggins, Rubio together, and possibly Thaddeus Young, I think this team could be the most improved team of the season.
You teach Zach LaVine how to shoot, and that team is absolutely terrifying.
Getting rid of their best player, getting rid of one of the top 5 players in the NBA may end up being a benefit to that team. So that's a little bit of my, a little bit of an off-the-wall prediction, but I do think they are going to be the most improved team in the NBA.
The Bucks are that team for me. I think that when you watch the Bucks play this year, they're going to be so fun to watch, and they're not going to win many games. But instead of watching Bucks games and just going, oh my, like, I don't even want to watch these games. Like, I'm gonna have fun watching some Bucks games this year because I just can't wait to see what happens. Without getting into awards too much, I think that there are going to be a couple of Bucks players that walk away with some hardware this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And the other team that we are overlooking when you're talking about the most improved team, the other team that we could be overlooking, that would be enough to make a most improved team also, could be the Lakers.
Yeah.
With Kobe and, Jeremy Lin. The Kobe factor alone might make them the most improved team in the NBA also. But I think the Wolves have got a lot to be excited about, and no doubt the Bucks have got a lot to be excited about. And I know that we follow them. We follow the Bucks fans and so forth out there on Twitter, and I know that fans are pretty excited this season. So, a lot to look forward to there. But why don't we quickly just get through some awards that we think right now? And it's going to be interesting to see before the season or midway through the season how these lists change. Um, but why don't we take a look, see what see how close we are with each other, or if we're way out of line here.
All right, so who do you have for MVP?
MVP, I think it's going back to LeBron again this
Yeah,
year.
agreed. I think that he's going to be in his home court. It's absolutely going back to LeBron this year, I think.
Yep, I think it is. Rounding out who I think would be in consideration. I did mention earlier that I actually think Westbrook's going to have a better year than KD this year. So I actually got Westbrook is, believe it or not, is the number two in the voting for the MVP, followed up by Kevin Durant. I got Anthony Davis in the mix.
I got it going LBJ, Durant, Anthony Davis.
Okay, yep. Somebody else who could be in the mix of MVP is a little bit far-fetched, way out there. But in the top 5 voting, I got Derrick Rose.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, if he, again, we've been saying it for the last, 7 weeks. Derrick Rose returns to MVP form. And honestly, it all depends on what level he comes back to. But depending on how well the Bulls do, Derrick Rose could be in consideration for the MVP spot. It's not out of the realm of possibility, in my opinion.
No, definitely not. The little we've seen of him so far, playing with U.S. basketball, is definitely a good sign. No doubt about that.
Absolutely. So, how about Defensive Player of the Year? Who you got?
Defensive Player of the Year, I'm actually going to stick with Noah this year.
Okay.
I actually have Noah being Defensive Player of the Year there. There could be a couple players who might surprise you, but right now I just see him as being the elite defensive player in the NBA this year.
I mean, as a Rockets fan, I really want to say Patrick Beverley, but I know that's not going to happen. So I got DeAndre Jordan out from the Clippers taking it this year.
I'll tell you what, he's definitely in my radar for that. I was looking at that a little bit. I loved what Doc Rivers did with him last year.
Absolutely.
And I loved what he was doing in the playoffs, and I was super excited about his game. And it's funny. He came very close to becoming a Celtic at one point. And, if Doc Rivers was the coach when that went down, excellent. If not, I'm not so sure. But, that's a good call there. But I didn't go much further. I didn't go deep into a top 5 on my Defensive Player of the Year because I was just looking at it. And, there are a lot of decent players out there. The other player that I actually do have in the mix is Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I mean, he's always going to be, I think from this point on in his career, he's going to be in that mix.
And he will probably win one or two before it's over.
He better, because, at this point, I don't have New Orleans. New Orleans was my number 9 seed. I didn't like their backcourt as much, but honestly, you look at that front court of theirs, and Anthony Davis and Omar Ashik are going to be probably the 2 hardest guys to score on in the NBA this year. I mean, that combination is just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, the reason I could not keep them out of keep them out of the playoffs is pretty much that combination right there. They've got a nice team. They've got an improving team. And I think when you have somebody who's in consideration, I think, we've talked about it a little bit. And I think he's another player who, in his 3rd year is going to be in that conversation for MVP talk. And I think if you have an MVP on your team, MVP alone usually is enough to propel you to the playoffs. And that's one of the reasons why I had them in the 8th seed. over the Rockets.
Yeah, but see, the thing
Because
is that and I mean, again, not trying to get off topic too much, but the thing is that when you're talking MVP, I've got two guys on the Rockets that I think could arguably be finish in the top 10 voting for MVP next year. Dwight Howard and James Harden could both arguably finish in the top 10. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying, whatever. But I'm saying that, putting it all just on paper, they could arguably finish in the top 10. So you've got two guys that could finish in the top 10 versus Anthony Davis, who is a very good player, and I think that he will win an MVP before his career is over, probably multiple. But yeah, I can't. And maybe it's the homer in me. To be completely honest, it could just be the fact that I'm a Rockets fan, but I just can't, in good faith, say that those two guys, that he's going to be better than those two guys as far as propelling his team to a playoffs.
well, it remains to be seen. Definitely remains to be seen. But I actually think Anthony Davis is, even in that when you're talking top five, I mean, any of those, a few of those players right there could be talking top three too. And when you're talking top three in the league, even one player, and the key, once again, not getting off topic because we'll talk about the Rockets all night. I'll buy into actually Dwight Howard in the MVP top 10 talk.
Yeah, well, what if James Harden, the reports out of Team USA are actually accurate, and James Harden comes in as not saying he's a superior defensive player, but he comes in as a guy that does not just let his guys score on him anymore. And suddenly you have a guy who is probably a top 4 offensive talent in the NBA, and a guy who's a good defender, not great, but a good defender. Do you really think that he's going to stay out of the top 10, top 5 voting for the MVP?
No, not at all. And I think we're having a totally different conversation about the Rockets if that happens. But I want to see that happen first.
That's fair. All right. So anyway, so back to the awards. Offensive Player of the Year.
Offensive Player of the Year. I'm giving that to, and I believe I actually think he's going to be the league leader in scoring this year. I'm giving it to Melo.
Okay.
I think he's going to be the offensive player of the year. I think he's going to thrive in that system. I think he's going to really enjoy playing in that system, and I think he's going to be close to 30 points a game.
I think they need a center before he's going to be putting up numbers like that because, again, triangle offense, you need somebody in the middle other than Cole Aldrich to be your center. And yeah, that might shock the crap out of you, but right now Cole Aldrich is their starting center. So I got Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is a once in a generation scorer. I haven't personally seen someone on his level probably since T-Mac. So a guy like that, I'm going to keep picking him for Offensive Player of the Year basically until he gets hurt. He's so, again, once in a generation guy. He can do things with a basketball on the offensive end of the floor that, again, I haven't really had the opportunity to witness in depth, maybe even ever in my lifetime at least. I mean, I'm sure that there have been other players that you got to watch play, but Kevin Durant is just he's a generational guy. He is a guy that is redefining what being a scoring machine looks like in the NBA.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. As I was thinking about that, and it killed me to say Melo. If I threw Melo out there, I'm being honest with my pick there. But I wrestled between him and KD. And as a player, as an overall talent, as a person, as an ambassador to the league, I love Kevin Durant. I just absolutely love him. Definitely nothing wrong with your pick with him because I wrestled between 1 and 2 right there, picking out that award. And it hurt me to do it, but that's what I went with. Maybe I'm trying to, reach a little bit early in the season, just coming up with something really, off the wall here. Not that picking Melo for Offensive Player of the Year is off the wall at all. But I love I absolutely love Kevin Durant. Him him and Anthony Davis right now are my two favorite players in the NBA.
That's fair. I mean, yeah. I mean, I like both of those guys. So how about rookie of the year?
Okay, rookie of the year. Once again, I wrestled between one and two, and I ended up going with Parker as number one. I figure he's the safe pick at rookie of the year, and they definitely have a lot to be excited about. I think he's going to get a lot of PT. I wrestled between him and Noel. I think Noel, after the season is done and after all is said, I think the whole body of work, I think Noel will actually be more deserving of the Rookie of the Year. But the Rookie of the Year typically is going to go to the more offensive player, and that is Parker.
So
Uh,
I completely agree with you on the offensive player thing, and I've got Parker winning it as well. But for me, I've got and it's sort of like the off the wall pick, as you said. These are early predictions. I've actually got Doug McDermott being a contender for that award. I think that there is a guy that was drafted into an absolutely perfect position. Um, he's got so many guys around him. I think that he's got an opportunity to maybe take a starting spot away from somebody else. He can shoot like Dunleavy. He's younger, so he's more athletic. They don't really have a small forward on that line in that lineup right now, so I think it's a guy that not only could possibly step in and start there, but he's a guy that could do it well because he does what nobody else on that team is able to do right now, which is score from literally everywhere on their side of the half court line. And he's a true offensive player. He can he can just score, and you can't key on him because you got Derrick Rose and you got Pau Gasol and you got Joakim Noah, and the second they look away, the ball is going to go to him and he's going to hit a three, and he's just going to keep doing that all year long.
it's remarkable that a team that good, like the Bulls, filled a need with the draft this year
Yeah.
so well that a team that good just filled that need. And I actually I would call it an off the wall pick at all because I had him sitting there at number three myself. Looking down at I had him at three. So you got him at number two. Did you go any further than that?
I mean, I didn't put Nolan. He is a contender for it, but when I looked at it, I was looking at guys from this draft class, and I don't know why. I was just trying to basically I was trying to continue the argument about who was going to be better between Parker and Wiggins. And the amazing thing to me is that Wiggins actually, I mean, I got McDermott finishing number two. I can honestly see, a guy like Noel finishing number, up there as well in the voting. But Marcus Smart is going to be in a position where he can put up some points and he's going to get some playing time. So, because I mean, okay, let me qualify that. I believe that Rondo is going to get traded before the season starts. I have a gut feeling, and yeah, it might not be true. In which case, like, I'm totally taking that back. I can't take it back, but, like, it's obviously not going to happen. But, with Rondo, I just think that Rondo is going to get moved, and with him gone, I think that the reins are going to fall to Marcus Smart, and I think that he's going to put up some points and look pretty good before the season's over, and have a really good second half to the year. So I actually had him finishing number three, considering that I'm assuming that Rondo is going to get moved.
Um, I've got him in my top five. I've got him in, because I have 4 and 5 as Wiggins and Marcus Smart right there, and I threw Marcus Smart in at number five because I'm actually more of the belief that if the Celtics move Rondo, it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen before the trade deadline, not necessarily the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's fair.
so I think if that happens at the trade deadline, then I think it'd be enough to push Smart, especially into having half the season to get his feet wet a little bit. Uh, but he's one of those players that his defensive game is that bringing that defensive game, especially the perimeter defensive game, means so much to how good of a player he can be,
Yep.
and just one of the reasons I like him a lot. So, so I think we're in agreement. Pretty safe pick going with Barker. Um, Pretty safe pick, and like you said, you probably thought you were throwing a curveball out there with McDermott, but not at all. Just because he fits that need so well on that team. Uh,
Again, like, you hear people talk about it all the time. Somebody getting drafted by the right team or getting put in the right position, and Jabari Parker might be one of those guys that he has all the talent in the world, but unless the Bucks are able to do something with that team, I don't know what's going to happen to him as far as his career goes. Doug McDermott could turn into a guy who is, I'm not going to say like he's transcendent or anything like that, but he could turn into one of, somebody that people remember as being a big part of a team that goes on multiple championship runs. I'm not just talking about like this year. I'm talking like, 5 years down the road. Let's say the Bulls go to the finals or, win the finals, and 4 of those 5 years, and McDermott is a part of that. And I think he could be a big part of that because of his shooting. Again, that team just lacks shooting.
yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So yeah, good pick right there. But I see once again we're getting closer to our end time here. So why don't we just rip through a couple real quick? I'll rip through a couple. You rip through a couple, and if you think I'm out of my mind, just let me know. But I got a couple of the quick awards here. I got comeback player of the year. I got Derrick Rose. I believe he's actually going to have that year. We already talked about it. Him falling in top five of MVP consideration, and I think he's really going to have that comeback this year. Behind him, I got Kobe. I think Kobe's going to have a decent year this year. I think he's going to play a good amount, and I think he'll have a good year. Um, you'll like my pick for most improved player. I think you'll like it a lot. Most improved player this year, Jeremy Lin. I think just looking at who's out there, who could be the most improved player, and being in the situation that he's in, especially if something goes down on that team, Nash gets hurt, something like that. I could definitely see him being the most improved player. Somebody by default falling into that category, and this is absolutely by default, is Anthony Bennett. He had such a lousy season last year that if he even plays anything close to a top five pickup last year, he could fall into that conversation also. And my other award that I threw out there, and this is very, very interesting one, and we touched upon this theme a good amount tonight, but here's an interesting one for you: Sixth Man of the Year. Um, Believe it or not, Sixth Man of the Year could possibly. I have one and two coming from the same team, depending on how the rotation falls on this team. Once again, I go back to the Chicago Bulls. Um, Believe it or not, Paul Gasol may not be a starter on that team.
Oh, because Taj Gibson?
He may not be a starter. He may not. And if that is the case, depending on how they run their sets and what the matchups are, I mean, it's a little bit far fetched out there. But if he is a six man, he's not a starter. I think he wins that award. Um, from the same team, the guy we just talked about, Doug McDermott,
No, I
is a
think
six
that
man.
Pau Gasol, I mean, it's something that I hadn't really considered because I've assumed he's been starting the whole time, but you're absolutely right. I mean, that is an option for them to start Taj Gibson over him, and especially if they're looking at building a dynasty for the future, that might be a good option to go with. So, I mean, like, that's not totally out of left field. I like that. So, I have most improved player. I actually have it going to Victor Oladipo down in Orlando. I think that
Nice pick.
yeah, I think that he really started to turn around last year. Honestly, like when I was watching, when Michael Carter Williams got the Rookie of the Year award, like I personally felt like he had a better start, but Victor Oladipo had a better finish. And I like the pairing of him with Peyton in the backcourt. I don't think the Magic are going to be doing anything, but I think Oladipo is going to be doing something himself. I actually had six man of the year going to. It's like, we've all got our own, the teams that isn't our favorite team, but we're sort of pulling for. I just wrote an article about them, but I got them. I got to go into Bledsoe and Phoenix if he goes back. I think that I really like what they're doing with their team, and he's in a position to be coming off the bench and playing with Isaiah Thomas or Goran Dragic out on the court with him. And he's a guy that put up 17 points a game playing with Dragic last year. So, six man of the year award, in my opinion, like he's a contender as well for that. There are a lot of guys out there, but I think that I like that option.
Another very good pick. He actually, as I was thinking about that, he was going to fall to my three, but I just wanted to throw out that whole Gasol McDermott, the thing that I had going on my theory there. But that's another good pick because that's he was actually my initial thought for six man of the year, Bledsoe.
Yeah, I really like, again, I just like what they're doing, and I like the opportunity for him if he goes back. And then I actually didn't have a comeback player of the year, but I went with coach of the year instead. And unless Greg Popovich wins it again, which is totally a viable option, I actually have Steve Kerr winning it in Golden State. I think the Golden State's going to do really well, and there's going to be a lot of hype. And, it might not necessarily be deserved, but I think there's going to be so much hype around a first-year coach doing what he's doing out in Golden State. Again, I got them finishing fourth out west. So, for a first year coach to be taking a team and finishing fourth out there, I think that's going to get a little bit of attention and a lot of attention actually. And again, barring Greg Popovich winning it again, I think that Steve Kerr could actually do it. Take it away.
Well, I've got Coach Pop winning it. It's one of those going back to once again. You show me someone better, and I'll pick that person at this point. And there's no doubt about it that Coach Pop is the best coach in the NBA. But you're absolutely right. That doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically going to win Coach of the Year award. Not a bad pick there. I guess my other one, although it may not be so much for coaching when you got a team like that, but I think Dave Blatt is going to end up in the conversation. Also, come down.
Yeah, throwing that out there. GM of the year is going to go. I'm totally spacing on his name because I didn't look up GM of the year award, but whoever the Cleveland GM, he's going to get the GM of the year award if they do anything.
It's already a done deal, even if they don't do anything, because they will for years.
They've already made him the trophy.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I mean, that's where I have it right there, and those are just some of my early picks. I think we're pretty much, I mean, looking at it for the most part, we're pretty close to being on the same page. I don't see anything, really, really way out there or anything like that.
I got Troy Daniels as MVP.
There you go. Yeah, you and me both. Hey, I had Kelly O as Rookie of the Year last year, so...
I remember when you were talking about him being the best player in the NBA and all this stuff.
Boy, did I sour on him really, really quick.
Very fast. Yeah, I remember when you tried to disown the fact that you made those picks, and I was like, no.
No, but that's absolutely where I am on my early picks right there. It did hurt me to run Mello out there in my awards, but I felt like I had to do it. I had to be honest with myself. And I do like the situation that he's in. And other than that, I mean, we went a little bit long tonight. I mean, we pretty much had a bunch of quick takes with these early picks. And, so I'm thinking, unless you really have something that's been on your mind, you want to get off your mind. But like I said, not too much has happened in the last week or so. So, I mean, I'm pretty much good. I pretty much got everything out there I needed to.
Yeah, same here. It's been a good week. Hopefully, we'll be able to find a way to watch the USA game against Brazil that happened tonight while we were recording this. Definitely want to try to catch that at some point, at least highlights. So, I'm sure there will be something good to talk about next week. Not quite sure what team we'll cover. Why don't you guys let us know on Twitter, let us know on Facebook. Go check us out and give us some feedback. All right.
Yeah, and absolutely, you'll be able to catch this podcast out there. We're also, we're now we have one of our older ones we've got out there on iTunes. We got on TuneIn Radio. But if you do want to catch us, you can catch us website one more time. It's onetakesport.weebly.com. You can catch us there. We also post all our podcasts up on YouTube. And as John's getting into some of his coach talk here, we're going to be putting in some illustrations for you guys, and especially for people who are interested in coaching and for players as well. There's definitely you'll be able to pick up there and a lot to pick up with John's articles that he throws out there. Mine are more fan based, but still a good read. So definitely check us out and follow us, no doubt.
Absolutely. All right, man. It's been a good week. Good talking to you.
Absolutely. Take care.